This Thursday, I'm Andrea Lutz. A Hamilton man who hit and killed a 9-year-old boy with his vehicle will serve 55 years in prison. 60-year-old Joseph McNamara was found guilty of negligent homicide, criminal endangerment, tampering with evidence, and possession of meth in the death of Robert Leonardi. McNamara's sentencing was moved up so the victim's parents could be in attendance. They're both teachers at Corvallis High School. The county attorney read an emotional statement to the courtroom about how difficult losing a son has been for the parents. An almost decade-old Montana murder case may finally be solved. Back in 2011, the dismembered remains of John Kreitz were found near McDonald Pass. This week, an arrest was finally made. Leon Ford was taken into custody in Washington State. He's charged with deliberate homicide. While the investigation took years to reach this point, the Lewis and Clark County Sheriff said they never considered it a cold case.
We never gave up. We continued to work leads. We continued to work where we had evidence, and there's been a lot of people, a lot of cooperation to make this happen today.
Ford is set to be arraigned in Washington State this afternoon, and the sheriff hopes to bring him back to Montana to face charges in Lewis and Clark County. Kalispell's 7-year-old Jordana Hubble is finally coming home. It's been 9 months since she was hit by a vehicle while exiting a school bus, and Jordana will be traveling from Houston to her family home in Olney. She's been in Houston since January, recovering in a coma emergence program. Her father, Cody, says she'll continue her treatment in Whitefish.
She definitely had no clue what was going on. She didn't understand why I wasn't taking her home when I'd come see her in the hospital, but that's all she knew. And yeah, so now she knows she's coming home now.
And the driver who struck Hubble has a trial set for November 3rd. Today, Montana's general election ballots will be officially certified without any Green Party candidates. The Montana Supreme Court ruled they can't be an option for voters this November. The petition which qualified them wasn't valid. A federal judge in Missoula also denied a separate request from the Green Party and voters to intervene. Health officials are reporting 117 new cases of coronavirus today, along with 5 new deaths in Montana. Today, Bighorn County is up to its 15th COVID-19 death. Yellowstone County reporting 2 additional deaths. The state's total number of cases is now over 6,000. Montanans on unemployment due to COVID-19's pandemic will start to see additional funds after that initial $600 a week ran out. The Montana Department of Labor, along with FEMA, approved additional payments for Montanans of $400 a week for those receiving unemployment benefits. So as of Wednesday, Montana is the 8th state to receive the FEMA grant. Claimants will receive backdated payments from August 1st.
We're gonna work like heck to try to get this thing administered as quickly as possible. I'm just happy that we have that we can provide this for them. That's our mission here, is to get that out the door as soon as we can.
There is no set date as to when the grant will last, but it will not last longer than December 27th. And unemployment claims are on the rise. As Michael George reports, it's bad news for industries already struggling.
Nelia Gonzalez spent 20 years working for the Marriott hotel chain, but when the pandemic hit, she was let go. The mother of 2 college-age children hasn't been able to find a new job, and money is tight.
I can't pay my light bill, my cable bill. I can't pay my medical insurance.
Last week, 1.1 million Americans filed for unemployment benefits. That's up 135,000 from the previous week. The layoffs come as the economy shows some signs of recovery. Home construction and sales have improved, but hotels, airlines, and industries involved with travel continue to suffer.
I think it's hitting all parts of the industry.
Wade Lundberg represents union workers in Minnesota. He says 85 to 90% of his 8,000 members in hospitality are unemployed.
Some hotels closed for a long period of time totally. Otherwise, we're seeing, occupancy rates that are anywhere from 5 to 10 to 15%.
Right now, I'm already worried.
Gonzalez was making ends meet with the $600 in weekly assistance from the federal government, but now that's gone.
I don't think I will have a place to live. I'll just probably be homeless. I don't know. I hope I can go with family. I'm not sure.
President Trump is offering $300 a week in unemployment, but workers in some states can't get it. And in states where the money is available, it could take weeks for checks to start rolling out. Michael George, CBS News, New York.
Protests continue in Portland for the 84th consecutive day. Police declared the situation a riot. A crowd of protesters marched and threw rocks through windows and started small fires. Officials say the protesters have caused millions of dollars in damages. And demonstrations are ongoing since the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis. Flint, Michigan residents will finally see some relief after a water crisis that made national headlines. Michigan will pay $600 million to those impacted by the lead-contaminated drinking water. The deal is meant to resolve all legal actions against the state. Officials say regulators didn't properly treat the water in Flint. Up next, a tale not to miss. We're going to find out how $100 is now helping disabled veterans who are going through the Dog Tag Buddies program, all thanks to a Billings middle schooler. But first, Ed is up next with an explanation of where all that smoke is coming from with your statewide forecast.
Storm Tracker weather starts now with meteorologist Ed McIntosh.
And welcome back to the new news. As we take a look, we got some haze happening in the skies, but we also have a couple of turkeys having morning breakfast. So before I make a bad joke about smoked turkeys, let's take a look at where the smoke is starting to move in region-wide. So we have a lot of smoke coming up from California. Now, as we continue to watch this through time, we're going to see that develop more and more, not only in southern Montana, but also through northern Wyoming. As this weather system will continue to develop here in the short term, we'll be looking for temperatures to start to edge back just a little bit. So across our area, here's where the smoke has been moving in right now. And we'll continue to watch that as it develops here through the course of the rest of the day and into the evening hours of tonight. So smoky haze across the region. So as the smoke continues to move into the eastern plains, we'll see some breaks tomorrow and actually a lot more sunshine by the time we start getting later on into the day. So the smoke isn't going to hang around for the entire period, but rather we're going to see that continue to develop off and on over the course of the next several days, with more smoke continuing to move in as we start getting into the afternoon hours. On Sunday in particular. So here's how things look for us this afternoon. Temperatures are in the 70s, 80s, already in the 90s across the eastern plains. More of that will continue to build in through the afternoon, with these isolated showers and thunderstorms continuing to push across the region as a cold front moves into the area. Now, the winds are generally light at this point, so we're only seeing the winds around the thunderstorms. And while the humidity is holding up fairly well in western Montana into the eastern plains, where we're seeing the hotter temperatures, they're already starting to drop. Fire weather concerns are also a real possibility today as we continue to watch these areas of central and northern Montana. And now we've added this area with northeastern Montana also looking for fire weather conditions as we start getting through the afternoon, as hot temperatures, low humidity, and the potential for some of those winds will move in. So here's where those isolated storms have developed here early in the day. And as we take a look at the big picture across the region, we're looking at a strong upper level jet that's continuing to tap into all of that hot air under this high pressure area. And while that smoke will continue to be part of the factor here over the course of the next 24 hours, bringing that period of smoke up into the region, we'll be watching also for a lot of this to start to circulate back out of the area once we start getting into this afternoon, and then start to push out of the region by tomorrow, and then stay a little bit clearer until we start getting into Saturday. The cold front moving through, that'll be the trigger for some of these showers and thunderstorms, also creating some of the wildfire conditions today. Possible strong storms anywhere in the green shaded areas, which basically is pretty much all of Montana. Sunshine building in tomorrow. We'll look for the daytime highs to stay in the 80s to 90s, especially hot weather east of the divide on Saturday out ahead of this next cold front. But once that front moves through, we'll start to see that squash that high pressure ridge, and we'll start to turn into a pattern of a little quieter weather. Temperatures today into the 80s to low 90s across central and western Montana, but well into the 90s here once we get into the eastern plains. And notice the blue arrows. That indicates where we could have some of those showers and thunderstorms move in that will create some of those outflow boundaries where we have the potential for some of those storms to start to develop. So here's how it looks for us as we get into the next several days. Temperatures mainly in the 80s. Stray showers and thunderstorms west of the divide, then drier weather starts to build back in after that. For areas around Great Falls and Helena, looking at temperatures in the 80s to low 90s, lows mainly in the 50s, and we'll continue to watch fairly quiet weather till we start getting into the first part of next week. Bozeman and Butte looking at temperatures in the 80s to even low 90s possible on Saturday. They'll be the warmest day around Bozeman, and then we'll look for temperatures to flatten out into the 80s after that. And across the eastern plains, temperatures especially hot on Saturday, and that'll linger into Monday before we start to see a cool down. Andrea, back to you.
All right, thanks, Ed. We do have a quick update for you on the Bear Creek fire burning near Dillon. It is holding steady, increasing about 100 acres in the last 24 hours. The acreage was recently mapped by an infrared flight overnight, shows 7,543 acres, but containment is up to about 20%. A total of 15 states are battling wildfires, most of them caused by lightning strikes. The National Interagency Fire Center says 650,000 acres of the country is burning. Most are burning in West California and Colorado, both reporting new wildfires. Experts say the high heat mixed with late summer lightning is a recipe for disaster. NASA wants to know what's happening to the Earth's magnetic field. Scientists call this weakening a dent in the atmosphere from South America all the way to Africa. For the most part, the area will not disrupt life on Earth, but the danger is for satellites and the International Space Station passing through the spot as it orbits. Scientists believe the iron and rock, which sits thousands of miles below the Earth's surface, could be contributing to it. What started out as a service project with a $100 budget is now helping veterans in the Billings community. 14-year-old Lauren Wright started My Vet's Friend. She provides bags for training materials to veterans going through the Dog Tag Buddies program. The program pairs local vets with service dogs. After 10 months of work, Lauren officially handed out those bags, and Senator Steve Daines was there honoring her with a U.S. Senator Challenge coin.
Again, it goes back to it's just truly inspiring that she understands. She has a grasp on how important our veterans are to our country, how important our military personnel are to our country, and that she's willing to do something to help them.
I went through a lot of bad times because of my PTSD. So for somebody that young to take it upon herself to try to help us and make life easier for us is everything.
Good job, Lauren. All right, your latest Ag News is coming up next.
Now, here's your Farm and Ranch Report from the Montana Ag Network.
Welcome back for today's Farm and Ranch News. And today finds us in Billings, Montana at the mid-year meeting of the Montana Stock Growers Association. And ranchers from across the state are gathered here looking at policy and setting policy to help the state's #1 industry in the livestock sector have a bright future. And joining us all the way from Washington, D.C. today is the Vice President of Government Affairs for the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, Ethan Lane. And Ethan, you've been traveling across northern Wyoming and Montana over the last week plus, meeting with producers that are NCBA members, that aren't NCBA members, talking about multiple things. How are those interactions going, boots on the ground?
You know, this has been about the best use of 10 days that I think I've had this year, quite honestly. After 6 to 7 months of being cooped up in Washington, it's been really productive to get out in the country, have some conversations with producers, and really hear their feedback about kind of what we're doing right, what we're getting right in Washington, what we're getting wrong, how they're seeing these issues play out on the ground, because, you know, what's happening in one county and with one group of producers can be fundamentally different from what we hear one county or two counties over, not to mention south of the border there in Wyoming versus here in Montana. So getting that diversity of opinions and aggregating those into policy that makes sense is really at the core NCBA's grassroots process. You know, it's what we've seen play out this summer at our live cattle marketing 7-hour meeting in Denver and our other policy committees as well. That's really at the heart of what we do. It's getting that feedback from coast to coast in the cattle business and finding some common ground there, because that's how we make an impact in Washington. You know, when all of us are speaking with one voice. So getting those opinions directly from the horse's mouth, so to speak, has been really helpful.
Well, Ethan, there's a lot of issues. I know a lot of producers are really focused on price discovery and the cattle markets, and Fred Wacker really got into depth on that. But when we come back, I want to talk about some of those other issues that NCBA is working on for livestock producers. We'll be right back. Ethan Lane, Vice President of the National Cattlemen's Beef Association's Government Affairs Division out in Washington, D.C., joins us. And Ethan, as I mentioned, a lot of focus on the cattle markets here as of late, but there's a lot of issues that impact Montana ranchers still being worked on. NEPA, regulations, ESA. Can we talk about some of those issues that you work on out in Washington, D.C.?
Absolutely. You know, we've really shifted gears over the last 6 or 8 months to focus on the crisis before us, but we're still in the last few months of President Trump's first term, and that means closing out some critically important business, making sure those rulemakings, whether it's, as you mentioned, NEPA, the Endangered Species Act rulemaking that we saw this time last year, the WOTUS final rule that's come out, and things we're still expecting. Hopefully we're going to see a decision on gray wolf status under the Endangered Species Act here before too long. You know, we're waiting for some of those things to close out, and then as an industry, we're likely going to have to go to court and defend some of that action that the agencies have taken to protect Montana ranchers and ranchers across the country. And that's kind of part of this process. We knew that was going to be the case, but step one is get those regulations out the door. We're hoping to see some work on grazing regs at the Bureau of Land Management still. That's something we've put a lot of time into over the last couple of years, and the Public Lands Council has really led the way on. So we have a lot of work left to do and a dwindling amount of time to get it done.
Well, Ethan, for sure, a lot of work going on in Washington, D.C. for cattlemen and women here in Montana and across the nation. Thank you for joining us here today. Well, friends, that's going to do it for today's Farm and Ranch News from the Montana Stock Growers Mid-Year Meeting here in Billings. I'm Lane Northland.
All right, thanks, Lane. Researchers are getting a clearer picture of the types of seeds mysteriously sent in the mail from China. The USDA says Montanans were given corn, sunflowers, peas, and lentils. And across the country, they cataloged more than 140 different plants. They were a mix of generally harmless fruit, vegetables, and weed seeds. Still, officials continue to stress that people should not be planting them. Business is good for lavender producers during the pandemic. The U.S. and U.K. reported an increase in sales this summer. This as people look for new ways to relieve stress and anxiety. Although there's no scientific proof that lavender is a stress reliever, there is evidence that it has antibacterial properties. Some lavender farms have added it to their hand sanitizer. The lack of a stimulus deal could be slowing people's ability to rebound from the pandemic. The original stimulus accomplished the goal of putting money back into the economy, but it appears that money is running out. A spokesperson for Walmart says store sales for the company rose more than 9% in April through June, and they say those sales are down 5% since then. Senator Kamala Harris spoke to the importance of family and compassion as she became the first woman of color to accept the vice presidential nomination of a major party. The third day of the virtual Democratic National Convention focused on coronavirus's pandemic, the climate change issue, racism, and presidential candidate Joe Biden's promise of change. Former President Barack Obama also spoke and urged Americans to vote for a Biden-Harris ticket. All right, Ed is back with us, taking another look at that weather.
We got the smoky haze out there, but the good news is at this point the air quality isn't much of an issue other than around Broadus where it's moved into the unhealthy category. But otherwise, some irritation certainly today with some of the smoky haze around. We also have the potential for showers and thunderstorms moving across the region, and that'll expand the area. The pink shaded regions show where we have concerns about wildfires, and that spreads into northeastern Montana by this evening as that chance of storm starts to move into the eastern plains. So Temperatures today mainly into the 80s and then 90s across western Montana heading into tomorrow. Great Falls and Helena, a few isolated showers or thunderstorms, but then we're into a warm, dry pattern beyond that. Bozeman and Butte looking at temperatures to stay into the 80s and a low 90 here or there, maybe around Bozeman. And Glendive and Billings really get into the heat by the weekend and into early next week.
All right, thanks, Ed, and thanks for joining us on the New News. Have a great day.